Welcome to Credit and Coffee. Today, I'm sharing the story of how a sudden medical crisis unveiled a hidden financial fragility, ultimately reshaping my entire existence and leading me down a long path toward finding peace in unexpected places. I remember a time when the world felt like an open road stretching endlessly before me, paved with opportunity and the promise of more, a boundless horizon shimmering with untouched potential. My days were filled with the persistent, rhythmic hum of a successful tech company, the rapid-fire, adrenaline-fueled decisions of a burgeoning startup I had a significant stake in, its audacious vision a constant source of thrill, and the exhilarating pulse of the stock market, where my investments seemed to grow with an almost magical ease, each upward tick a whisper of validation. I'd spent years cultivating a meticulous sense of financial security, building up what I believed was a robust portfolio, diversifying across various sectors with careful precision, even dipping cautiously into the exciting but notoriously volatile world of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, seeing it as a modern frontier for generating passive income, a new, untamed frontier for wealth. The house, a sprawling, modern structure of clean lines and expansive glass, nestled gracefully on a quiet, tree-lined street where the autumn leaves would turn to fiery gold, was more than just a home. It was a gleaming testament to that success, a physical manifestation of my hard work and relentless ambition, every polished surface reflecting a quiet pride. It had felt good, solid, substantial, the kind of place where dreams were meant to flourish and precious memories were built, each room echoing with the promise of a well-lived life. Yet even then, a quiet anxiety often hummed beneath the polished surface, a subtle, almost imperceptible tremor that whispered about being house poor, of the mortgage payments being just a little too substantial, even with my comfortable and growing income, a constant, low-level thrum of unease that I often tried to intellectualize away. My wife and I, in those days, often spoke of future plans, of early retirement on a sun-drenched coast, of the freedom our careful financial planning would effortlessly afford us, sketching out vivid pictures of leisurely mornings and unburdened travel. We were a team, or so I believed, navigating the intricate complexities of life and money together, each decision, each investment, supposedly a shared endeavor aimed at securing our joint future, our hands clasped metaphorically, moving in unison towards a golden horizon. There was an unspoken competition, too, a subtle undercurrent among my friends, especially one in particular, whose professional jealousy I often felt like a cold breath on my neck, a subtle shift in his gaze, always comparing our latest acquisitions, the new luxury car, the renovated kitchen, our extravagant vacation plans, our children's achievements, though I tried to dismiss it as nothing more than friendly rivalry, a natural byproduct of success. We ate well, the finest cuts of meat, exotic spices filling the kitchen, traveled often to far-flung, sun-soaked destinations, and the bills, though numerous and arriving in thick envelopes, were always paid promptly, usually with a casual click of a button from my phone, a seamless, almost thoughtless transaction that required little consideration. The low, expensive hum of the top-of-the-line refrigerator, the gentle, almost imperceptible whisper of the central air conditioning, the delicate, floral scent of fresh-cut flowers my wife always insisted on having in the entryway, often an extravagant arrangement of lilies or hydrangeas. These were the small, everyday luxuries I'd come to associate with our life, the very opulent fabric of our perceived contentment, symbols of a life well curated. The morning coffee, strong and dark, its rich aroma filling the kitchen, in an expensive hand-thrown ceramic mug, warm against my palms, watching the early light filter through the tall windows, painting stripes across the oak floor, felt like a quiet ritual of triumph, a daily affirmation of my accomplishments. I was a man who had made it, or so I told myself, oblivious to the invisible cracks forming beneath the polished surface of my existence, the slow, insidious erosion beneath the veneer of prosperity. We had insurance, of course, the best money could buy, a comprehensive policy that promised peace of mind against life's unpredictable turns, a safety net woven with the strongest threads of financial security. It was just another line item in the meticulously crafted budget, a necessary expenditure, rarely thought about beyond its annual renewal, a forgotten expense until it arrived again in the mail. I thought I had considered every risk, managed every potential pitfall with an almost obsessive foresight, laid a secure, unshakable foundation for everything we had built. I truly believed I had insulated us from the harsh realities that could shatter other people's worlds, that we were somehow impervious to the common misfortunes. The world outside our meticulously curated bubble often felt distant, a place where other people struggled with debt or job loss or sudden, devastating illness, not us, never us. Our conversations often revolved around the latest market trends, the next big investment opportunity, expanding our passive income streams even further, always looking forward, always striving for more, never quite satisfied with the present. The idea of constraint, of having to deeply consider the price of a supermarket menu item, of comparing two brands of toothpaste, seemed an alien concept, a relic of a past I had thankfully escaped, a past I never wanted to revisit. Our friends, many from the same ambitious tech circles, often admired our apparent ease, our seamless transitions from one success to another, never seeing the underlying tension, the quiet pressure of maintaining appearances, the subtle strain of trying to keep up, or even stay ahead, in a silent, relentless race. The large house, while a source of immense pride, had begun to feel less like a haven and more like a golden cage, its ever-increasing maintenance costs and property taxes a constant, insidious drain, making us, ironically, feel more bound than free, tied to its expensive demands. The rising interest rates on the mortgage, though manageable in isolation, were a persistent, low hum of worry in the background, a silent reminder of how much was still owed, how much was still at risk, a foundational vulnerability I chose to ignore. It was a comfortable life, yes, a life wrapped in soft cotton and expensive silk, but one built precariously on a fragile, expanding balloon of expectations, unknowingly vulnerable to the smallest pinprick, the slightest unexpected tremor. The world I was about to learn had a cruel, almost vindictive way of delivering such pinpricks, precisely when you felt most invulnerable, most secure in your meticulously constructed fortress. The pinprick came not as a financial downturn, not as a market crash, not as a subtle shift in economic winds, but as a sudden, visceral jolt to my own physical being, a violent, undeniable rupture in the illusion of my well-being. I woke one morning with a pain unlike anything I had ever experienced, a searing, relentless fire in my abdomen that felt as though my insides were being torn apart, bringing me to my knees with a gasp that tore at my throat. The world blurred around me, the familiar comfort of my home dissolved into a haze of white-hot agony, and the next thing I knew, I was being rushed to the emergency room, the dizzying, flashing blue and red lights of the ambulance a stark, terrifying contrast to the tranquil morning I had expected, a jarring intrusion into the calm. The sterile, almost metallic smell of the hospital, a cloying mix of antiseptic and something vaguely chemical, something of illness and fear, became the dominant, inescapable scent of my new reality, clinging to my clothes, my skin, my memory. Days bled into nights under the harsh, unyielding fluorescent lights, a blur of anonymous doctors in scrubs, harried nurses, endless tests with cold machines, and the constant, unnerving beeping and whirring of medical equipment, each sound a stark reminder of my precarious state. My wife was there, a constant, unwavering presence, her face a mask of profound worry, lines etched around her eyes, holding my hand with a grip that was both fragile and fiercely strong, whispering reassurances into the oppressive silence of my room, her voice a thin thread of hope. It was a serious, unexpected illness, a swift, brutal invasion of my body, requiring immediate, extensive surgery and a prolonged, arduous recovery that felt like an eternity. I was profoundly grateful to be alive, to slowly, painfully feel the return of my strength, the gradual rebuilding of my body. But even then, in the haze of potent pain medication, a different kind of anxiety began to creep in, a chilling premonition that had nothing to do with the hospital's relentlessly efficient air conditioning. The first hospital bill arrived in a crisp, unsettling white envelope, its edges sharp and unyielding, slipped silently under my room door on a Tuesday morning, a stark intrusion into my fragile recovery. It wasn't just a bill, it was a manifesto of despair, a multi-page document detailing every procedure, every medication, every single agonizing hour, every swab, every bandage, every fleeting moment of medical care, each line item a small, sharp barb. My hands trembled violently as I read the numbers, the zeros stretching out into an amount that seemed utterly fictional, an impossible, astronomical sum that far exceeded what I had ever imagined, a figure that made my stomach clench. Our comprehensive insurance, the policy I had paid for religiously, year after year, with unwavering diligence, suddenly seemed to shrink and shrivel, revealing gaping holes and deductibles I had never truly comprehended, an almost criminal betrayal of the peace of mind it had promised. It was a brutal awakening to the true, unvarnished cost of modern medicine, a crushing, suffocating weight that descended upon me long before my body had fully healed, a weight far heavier than any physical pain. That bill and the many more that followed, each one a fresh stab of fear, became the invisible scar, deeper and more insidious than any surgical incision, a wound that festered internally. It was the first true, undeniable crack in the foundation of our seemingly impregnable financial fortress, a tremor that shook the very ground beneath us. My wife and I, once so aligned in our financial aspirations and life plans, began to fray under the relentless, corrosive pressure. Our conversations, once filled with shared dreams of exotic travel and future contentment, now revolved solely around numbers, bewildering deductibles, the agonizing details of medical debt, the endless, soul-crushing phone calls to insurance companies that led nowhere, each one a frustrating, circular argument with an uncaring bureaucracy. I discovered, to my horror and profound disbelief, that she had been harboring secret debt for years, a hidden labyrinth of small credit lines, undisclosed online purchases of luxury items, perhaps a few risky investments of her own in speculative ventures that had gone sour, all skillfully hidden beneath the glittering veneer of our shared prosperity, a deception that had been meticulously maintained. It was a betrayal that stung deeper than any physical pain, a quiet act of deception that fractured the fundamental trust we had built, a cold, hard wedge driven between us. The quiet anxiety of being house poor intensified, transforming into a screaming panic that clawed at my throat, a constant adrenaline-fueled terror. The mortgage, with its rising interest rates, became a monstrous entity lurking in the shadows of our once beautiful home, its monthly demands echoing ominously. The startup, already demanding my undivided attention with its relentless pace, now suffered grievously from my prolonged absence, my focus fractured beyond repair by illness and the growing financial crisis, its momentum stalling. Investors began to pull back, their initial enthusiasm and unwavering confidence waning dramatically in the face of my unexpected health issues and the company's subsequent stagnation, their polite but firm withdrawals signaling the beginning of the end. The venture capital that had once seemed limitless, a bottomless well of opportunity, now felt like a dwindling, rapidly evaporating resource, each passing week watching it shrink with a sickening dread. The cumulative stress of the medical bills, the crushing realization of my wife's secret financial struggles, and the mounting, suffocating pressure from the crumbling business created an unbearable, toxic tension in our home. The walls, once a source of comfort and security, now felt like they were slowly, inexorably closing in, suffocating me. The delicate scent of fresh-cut flowers was replaced by the acrid, metallic smell of desperation, unspoken words of fear and resentment hanging heavy and suffocating in the air between us, thicker than any fog. Arguments, once rare and quickly resolved with a gentle touch or a soft word, became frequent, sharper, laced with resentment and raw, corrosive fear, each word a weapon. The concept of risk management, once a theoretical exercise in portfolio diversification and strategic financial planning, now became a brutal, real-world lesson in survival, a harsh, unforgiving crucible. We were no longer partners navigating a prosperous future together. We were two increasingly isolated individuals, adrift and drowning in a vast, terrifying sea of unforeseen debt, each struggling with their own private despair, barely able to see the other through the rising tide. The quiet comfort of our expensive ceramic mugs and the ritualistic morning coffee was replaced by the frantic clatter of hastily made coffee, consumed in strained silence, each of us lost in our own agonizing thoughts of how we had arrived at this treacherous precipice, how everything we had worked for was now teetering precariously on the edge of utter collapse. The dream of early retirement, the grand plans we once held so dear and nurtured with such care, now seemed like a cruel, mocking joke, fading into the bitter, inescapable reality of our impending financial ruin, a nightmare unfolding in broad daylight. The silent accusations in our shared space, the way we avoided eye contact over the breakfast table, the almost imperceptible flinches when our hands accidentally brushed, all spoke volumes of the chasm that had opened between us. The financial infidelity, far more than the physical pain, had poisoned the wellspring of our trust, leaving a bitter taste that no amount of shared history could sweeten. I found myself obsessively replaying conversations, searching for clues, for moments I had missed, for the subtle hints of her secret spending that now seemed so glaringly obvious in hindsight. The realization that I had been so blind, so caught up in my own perceived success, only added to the crushing weight of my self-reproach. The house, once a symbol of our joint achievement, now felt like a stage for our unraveling, each room holding memories of happier times, now tainted by the present desolation. The sound of my own footsteps echoing in the once bustling hallways felt hollow, a premonition of the emptiness to come. My days were a blur of managing pain, both physical and emotional, navigating mounting medical bills that seemed to multiply overnight, and trying to salvage the remnants of a business that was slipping through my fingers like sand. The constant ringing of my phone, once a welcome sound of opportunity, now brought only dread, another creditor, another investor pulling out, another reminder of the abyss we were staring into. The feeling was not just of loss, but of profound failure, a deep-seated belief that I had not only failed myself, but everyone I cared for, everyone who had believed in me. This internal narrative of failure became as relentless as the pain itself, a constant, gnawing presence. I would often sit by the tall windows, once a source of light and inspiration, now just a frame for a world that felt increasingly indifferent, watching the same quiet street, but seeing it through entirely new, bleaker eyes. The invisible scar was not just about the money, it was about the shattering of an identity, the brutal dismantling of the carefully constructed persona I had presented to the world and to myself. It was the crushing weight of expectation, not just from my friends and colleagues, but from my own inner critic, who now had endless ammunition. Every decision, every calculation, every investment that had once brought a thrill of control now felt like a misstep, leading me further down a path of no return. The once thrilling pulse of the stock market became a frantic, desperate flicker, my carefully diversified portfolio evaporating into thin air as I was forced to sell assets at a loss to cover the ever-increasing medical debt and the demands of the decaying startup. Cryptocurrencies, once a symbol of my forward-thinking investment strategy, became a testament to the brutal capriciousness of an unregulated market, their value plummeting with breathtaking speed, taking a significant chunk of my remaining capital with them. My dreams of a serene, financially independent future shattered like glass, leaving only sharp, painful shards. The irony of it all, building a life on the premise of invulnerability, only to be brought down by the most basic and unpredictable human fragility, was not lost on me, but rather echoed with a bitter, mocking laughter in the quiet corners of my mind. The downward spiral accelerated with a brutal, relentless momentum, pulling me deeper into its cold, unforgiving vortex. The layoff notice came by email, a cold, impersonal message delivered on a dreary Monday morning, its stark digital text a stark, unfeeling guillotine severing my connection to the long-term tech job that had been my primary anchor, my professional identity for 2 decades. The emotional toll was immense, a sudden, gut-wrenching realization that my professional identity, so meticulously built over 20 years of dedication and strategic networking, had been erased with a few keystrokes, rendered obsolete by a faceless corporate decision. I sat at my home office desk, staring at the glowing screen, the words blurring through a haze of shock and disbelief, feeling the heavy, undeniable weight of the invisible scar deepening within me, a fresh wound opening alongside the old. It wasn't just a job, it was a sense of purpose, a meticulously cultivated professional network, a steady, predictable income that had underpinned our entire lifestyle, and suddenly it was gone, leaving a gaping void. The silence in the house after that email was deafening, amplifying the quiet anxiety that had been festering for months, turning it into a roaring cacophony in my head, a frantic chorus of what now? The mortgage payments, already a source of immense, suffocating pressure with their rising interest rates, now loomed as an insurmountable obstacle, an ever-growing monster I could no longer feed. Every crisp, official envelope from the bank felt heavier than the last, a lead weight on my chest, each embossed letter a declaration of impending doom. Soaring inflation meant that every trip to the supermarket was an agonizing exercise in grim calculation, the brightly lit aisles a battleground of price comparison, the menu prices on the shelves a constant, humiliating reminder of how much less our rapidly dwindling money bought, how quickly our purchasing power evaporated. Utility bills, once an almost invisible afterthought, became a source of constant dread, each kilowatt-hour consumed, each gallon of water used, a painful drain on our vanishing resources, another slow leak in the sinking ship. The once comfortable warmth of our home, maintained by an expensive central heating system, began to feel like a luxury we could no longer afford, the chill of morning air seeping into the poorly insulated rooms, mirroring the cold dread that had taken root deep in my heart, spreading its icy tendrils. My startup, already weakened and on life support due to my illness and fractured focus, couldn't withstand the double blow of my personal financial crisis and the broader economic downturn that swept through the market. Investors, seeing the undeniable writing on the wall, the clear signs of an impending failure, pulled out completely, their polite but firm goodbyes echoing hollowly. The venture capital that had once fueled our audacious dreams dried up overnight, a once gushing river reduced to a parched bed of cracked earth. The dream that had consumed so many late nights and early mornings, so much intellectual and emotional energy, collapsed into a heap of unfulfilled promises and mounting liabilities, a monument to ambition turned to dust. My once promising investments in cryptocurrencies, the Bitcoin I had optimistically acquired years ago with a sense of pioneering spirit, suffered a catastrophic plunge, turning what I had hoped would be a safety net into a gaping, inescapable hole, another brutal failure adding to the growing, crushing pile of ruin. The concept of passive income, once a cornerstone of my financial philosophy, became a cruel, mocking irony, a bitter jest whispered by the winds of misfortune. It was a complete financial collapse, a tsunami that swept away everything I had painstakingly built, everything I had believed defined me, leaving behind only wreckage and desolation. The marital strain, already at a breaking point, finally snapped under the unbearable pressure, cracking cleanly down the middle. The secret debt my wife had accumulated, now fully exposed and contributing to our shared ruin, became an unforgivable wound, a breach of trust that felt irreparable. The arguments escalated from frustrated whispers and terse exchanges to raw, public accusations shouted across the empty rooms, each word a painful blow. The quiet resentment that had festered between us for so long finally erupted into open hostility, an uncontained fury that consumed everything in its path. The finality of the divorce due to our family financial crisis was a brutal, drawn-out affair, a protracted battle of wills that left behind not just empty rooms in the house, but an even emptier, aching space in my heart. The division of assets was a cruel mockery, a stark reminder of how little was truly left to divide beyond the mountain of debt. The legal fees were another layer of financial burden, a cruel twist of the knife, extracting what little liquidity we had left. I remember the sharp, distinct sound of the front door closing for the last time behind her, a hollow echo in the suddenly vast, cold space, reverberating through the silence, sealing my solitude. The emotional toll was profound. A sense of loneliness settled in, heavy and pervasive, a thick, suffocating blanket. During this harrowing time, the immense pressure of supporting aging parents while navigating my own collapse became an almost impossible burden, a crushing weight added to an already unbearable load. My mother, with her failing health and increasing medical needs, and my father, struggling desperately with his own meager retirement savings in a volatile economy, suddenly looked to me, their successful son, for support, for answers I simply didn't have. I was caught firmly in the crushing embrace of the sandwich generation, expected to provide unwavering stability and financial security when my own world was crumbling to dust around me. The moral compromises I had made over the years for a high-paying but soul-crushing job, the moments I had justified turning a blind eye to ethical ambiguities for the sake of a larger paycheck, the quiet suppression of my conscience, now felt like a bitter, poisonous harvest. It seemed my previous successes had only served to raise the stakes for my inevitable, spectacular fall, making the descent even steeper, the impact even harder. The professional jealousy from that friend, once a minor annoyance, a fleeting irritation, now felt like a vindictive echo, a silent confirmation of his own perceived triumph in my downfall, a quiet smirk from a distance. My mental landscape was a perpetual storm of constant anxiety, a relentless internal monologue of numbers, deadlines, and the crushing, suffocating weight of everything I had lost, every failure replayed in agonizing detail. Sleep became a coveted, unattainable luxury, replaced by endless, restless nights staring at the ceiling, the shadows playing tricks on the walls, making them seem to buckle under the strain, mirroring my own internal collapse. Every waking moment was a desperate battle against the encroaching despair, a frantic, exhausting search for a way out of the suffocating financial comparison that haunted me, a comparison I was now unequivocally losing. The burden of student loan debt, which I had almost forgotten about in my years of high income, a distant memory from my youth, resurfaced with a vengeance, its monthly statements a stark reminder, another phantom limb of my financial past now demanding its unrelenting due, impacting every major life decision I faced, every attempt to rebuild. I was trapped, caught in a tangled, inescapable web of obligations and failures, unable to see a path forward, stripped bare of my financial security, my marriage, my career, and almost my very hope, a man adrift in a sea of despair with no compass. The once familiar rhythm of my life was shattered, replaced by a jarring cacophony of worry and regret. I would pace the empty rooms, the floorboards groaning under my restless weight, each step a testament to my internal turmoil. The silence was not peaceful, but rather a vast, echoing void, filled only with the clamor of my own distressed thoughts. My appetite vanished, food tasting like ash in my mouth, and my body, once strong, felt brittle and weak, a mere shell. The reflection in the mirror showed a man I barely recognized, his eyes hollowed, his shoulders slumped, carrying the weight of 1,000 invisible burdens. The very act of breathing felt laborious, as if the air itself was thick with my failures, each inhalation a struggle against the suffocating pressure. I tried to reach out tentatively to a few old acquaintances, but my story, once one of aspirational success, was now a tale of abject failure, and I sensed their discomfort, their quick, polite excuses to distance themselves from my misfortune. It was a stark reminder of the conditional nature of many relationships, built on the shifting sands of shared prosperity. Even the simple act of walking past a coffee shop near my building, catching the rich aroma of roasted beans, once a source of comfort, now felt like a cruel taunt, a reminder of the easy, thoughtless luxuries I had once enjoyed. Every corner of the city, every familiar street, seemed to hold a memory of a past self, a life that was now irrevocably gone, leaving me feeling like an alien in my own skin, in my own former world. The weight of supporting my parents, though I tried to shield them from the full extent of my own financial ruin, became a constant, agonizing undercurrent. Their calls, once a source of gentle connection, now filled me with a fresh wave of guilt, knowing I was failing them too, unable to be the reliable, successful son they had always depended on. The bitter taste of should have lingered constantly, a shadow over every waking moment. I should have diversified more, saved more, listened more, trusted less, questioned more. The list of hypothetical corrections was endless, each one a fresh lash of self-recrimination. The invisible scar pulsed with a dull, persistent ache, a constant companion in my descent. It was a deep, internal wound, a testament to the fact that money, while tangible, had truly shaped the invisible landscape of my soul, and its loss had torn through me in ways I never thought possible. The day I finally declared bankruptcy was a strange, disorienting mix of profound, searing shame and an unexpected, almost perverse relief, a release from a burden I could no longer physically carry. Walking out of the courthouse, the crisp autumn air felt both biting against my exposed skin and strangely cleansing, as if it were stripping away layers of accumulated pretense and despair. The crushing weight wasn't entirely gone, not entirely, but it had shifted, transformed, become a different kind of burden, one that was, at least, officially acknowledged and processed by a system, rather than festering in the dark, suffocating corners of my mind. It was the stark, undeniable, official acknowledgement of rock bottom, a definitive line drawn in the sand, marking the end of one life and the terrifying, uncertain beginning of another. The large house, the grand, imposing symbol of my former success and carefully curated life, was gone, of course, swallowed by the relentless tide of debt. I moved into a small, nondescript apartment, the kind with thin painted-over walls where you could distinctly hear the upstairs neighbor's television, a low murmur of voices, and the faint, persistent scent of their cooking, sometimes garlic, sometimes frying onions, seeping through the vents. It was a stark, almost brutal contrast to the quiet luxury and expansive privacy I had known, a sudden, jarring descent into anonymity. The kitchen, with its chipped countertop scarred by years of use, an older, rattling refrigerator, its compressor groaning to life with a jolt, was just a utilitarian place to prepare basic food, not entertain lavishly. The empty cups on the table, often just one, a simple, utilitarian ceramic mug, its surface cool against my fingertips, were a constant, quiet reminder of my solitary existence, not a symbol of loss, but of a new, stark reality. My budget, once a sophisticated spread of diverse investments, varied income streams, and carefully planned expenditures, was now a harsh, unforgiving line item list. Rent, utilities, food, gas, a few basic necessities. Every single penny counted, every decision weighed heavily, a meticulous balancing act of survival. The chill of morning air, now an undeniable presence in the poorly insulated rooms of the apartment, was no longer a poetic nuance but a sharp, physical discomfort, a constant reminder to turn down the thermostat, to save another precious dollar, to pull on an extra sweater. I began to dress in worn, practical clothes, my old designer shirts and bespoke suits replaced by practical, inexpensive ones from a discount store, the fabric rougher, less yielding against my skin but honest. The supermarket became a place of intense strategy, where I meticulously compared unit prices, deciphering tiny labels, opting for the generic brands, making humble meals stretch for days. The once forbidden concept of looking at a menu and calculating its cost before ordering now defined my every purchase, every choice. The professional jealousy and financial comparison that had once stung, once fueled my ambition, now felt distant, irrelevant, a faint echo from a world I no longer inhabited. There was nothing left to compare, no pretense to maintain, a strange, liberating absence of expectations. My midlife career change was less a choice and more a necessity, a brutal, undeniable pivot driven by survival. I found work, not in the glamorous, intellectually stimulating tech industry, but in a soul-crushing, physically demanding job at a local warehouse, moving boxes, stacking shelves, utterly devoid of the intellectual stimulation I had once craved. It was repetitive, monotonous, and exhausting, but it paid the bills barely. The moral compromises I had once made for high pay, for career advancement, now seemed absurd. I was making compromises just to survive, just to keep a roof over my head and put food on the table, a far more fundamental and immediate justification. The daily grind was physically and emotionally exhausting, leaving me little energy for anything else, but it instilled a new kind of discipline, a raw, fundamental understanding of what it truly meant to earn every single dollar through sheer physical labor. There were moments, late at night, when the loneliness was a tangible, oppressive presence, a cold hand on my shoulder, its icy grip chilling me to the bone. I would stare at the thin, unassuming walls of my small apartment, remembering the grand ambitions, the dreams of a different future, the life I had so meticulously planned. The invisible scar of the hospital bill, of the divorce, of the bankruptcy, was a constant dull ache, a phantom limb of a life irrevocably lost, a reminder of wounds that never fully closed. But in that raw, stripped-down existence, something else began to slowly emerge, a quiet, almost imperceptible shift. A reevaluation of values. What truly mattered when all the trappings of success were gone, when the external markers of achievement had vanished? It wasn't the dizzying stock market gains or the startup's inflated valuation. It wasn't the size of the house or the brand of coffee in my mug. It was the quiet morning light that managed to creep through my window, the simple, genuine warmth of a cheap blanket on a cold night, the taste of a home-cooked meal, however humble its ingredients. It was the simple, profound act of survival, and finding a quiet, resilient strength in that bare existence. I started taking long walks, just observing the world around me, the intricate patterns of the changing seasons, the myriad, anonymous faces of strangers passing by, their lives unfolding around me, separate yet connected. The quiet reflection brought a gradual, profound shift in perspective, a slow recalibration of my internal compass. The constant anxiety over soaring inflation, high utility bills, and the ever-increasing cost of living still gnawed, a persistent hum beneath the surface. But I learned to manage it, to break it down into smaller, more digestible worries, to focus on what I could control in the immediate moment. I was still supporting my aging parents, the pressure of the sandwich generation never truly lifting, a constant thread in my new reality, but I found new ways to help them, less financially, more through presence and small, meaningful acts of care, managing their appointments, fixing small things around their house, offering companionship and a listening ear. It wasn't the life I had planned, the glossy, ambitious future I had once envisioned, but it was life, unvarnished and real, gritty and raw, and I was somehow still standing, still breathing, still finding a way forward, one careful step at a time. The bitter taste of regret and self-blame began to soften, replaced by a quiet sense of acceptance for the hand I had been dealt. I learned to look at my reflections not with self-loathing, but with a growing recognition of resilience, of a quiet, unyielding spirit. The walls of my small apartment, initially a symbol of my failure, slowly began to feel like a protective shell, a safe harbor from the storms outside. I found comfort in the predictable routines, the precise movements of my body at the warehouse, the familiar scent of cardboard and dust. The world was stripped bare, and in its starkness, a new clarity emerged, a profound understanding of what true wealth truly entailed, far beyond any investment portfolio or a Bitcoin balance. It was not in accumulation, but in presence, in enduring, in the quiet, undeniable strength found in simply continuing. The rebuilding process was not a grand, dramatic overhaul, not a sudden, triumphant return to former glory, but a slow, painstaking accumulation of small, quiet efforts, each one a testament to renewed intention. It was indeed, brick by painful brick, a deliberate, almost meditative act of reconstruction, piece by arduous piece. I started to find a steady rhythm in my new, simpler life, a routine that, while humble and devoid of any outward glamour, brought a surprising sense of groundedness, an anchoring presence in the chaos that had been my past. My work at the warehouse, though still far from glamorous or intellectually stimulating, began to feel less like a burden and more like a steady, reliable anchor, a consistent source of purpose and income, however modest. I learned to appreciate the simple, tangible satisfaction of a task well done, the quiet camaraderie with my coworkers, people from different walks of life, none of whom knew the successful man I used to be, and to whom I was simply another person doing an honest day's work. The invisible scar was still there, a constant, faint reminder of the past, a story etched onto my very being, but it had begun to fade, to become less raw, less painful, more integrated into the resilient fabric of who I was becoming. I found small, unexpected joys in the most mundane places. The genuine warmth of the sun on my face during my short lunch break, its rays a comforting caress, the quiet, almost domestic hum of the old coffee machine at work, brewing a passable cup, the way a cheap but sturdy pair of work boots felt solid and reliable on my feet, protecting me through long shifts. I started reading again, devouring books borrowed from the local library instead of buying them, rediscovering the pure, unadulterated pleasure of getting lost in stories, in worlds beyond my own, a welcome escape. The thin walls of my small apartment, once a symbol of my reduced circumstances and diminished status, slowly transformed into a quiet sanctuary, a personal refuge, a place where I could retreat, reflect, and just be, unburdened by external expectations. There was no pressure to entertain, no frantic need to impress, just the simple comfort of being alone with my thoughts in peace. The sense of profound loneliness that had enveloped me like a shroud after the divorce gradually gave way to a gentle, quiet acceptance of solitude, a chosen quietude. It wasn't isolation. It was a deliberate, cherished space for healing and introspection, a necessary period of self-discovery. I learned to cook simple, nourishing meals, finding deep satisfaction in the mindful process, the aromas of garlic and herbs filling my small kitchen, turning humble ingredients into something comforting. The empty cups on the table were no longer a symbol of loss or absence, but a quiet testament to a solitary, self-sufficient morning ritual, a moment of peace before the day began. The chill of morning air still seeped in, a perennial reminder of the outside world, but I met it now with a warm cup of herbal tea, cradled in my hands, a renewed sense of resilience that had been forged in the unforgiving crucible of my losses. My aging parents, though still a responsibility and a source of gentle worry, became a source of unexpected connection and profound comfort. My financial help was limited, a painful truth I had come to terms with, but my time and attention were not. I visited them regularly, helped them with chores, listened patiently to their stories, finding a new kind of purpose in simply being present for them, in offering the warmth of my company. The pressure of the sandwich generation no longer felt like a crushing weight, but rather a quiet privilege to care for those who had cared for me, a reciprocal act of love and duty. The financial anxiety, though it never entirely vanished, a faint tremor that remained beneath the surface, became a dull ache rather than a sharp, debilitating pain. I had learned to live comfortably within my means, to budget meticulously, to find genuine contentment in what I had, rather than constantly striving for what I lacked, for what was perpetually out of reach. The failures with cryptocurrencies, the collapse of the business, the job loss, the bankruptcy, all of it had stripped away the illusion of control, the false sense of invulnerability, forcing me to confront what truly, deeply mattered beyond the fleeting material. I was no longer defined by my wealth or lack thereof, by my professional status or my marital state. I was simply me, a man who had weathered a brutal storm and emerged, not entirely unscathed, but undeniably stronger, more resilient, and profoundly, irrevocably changed. There was a gentle, almost poignant bittersweetness to this new contentment, a quiet acknowledgement of the past. The grand dreams of the past, the ambitious visions, were gone, replaced by a quiet, profound acceptance of the present, of its limitations and its unexpected graces. I didn't have the grand house, the thriving startup, the impressive investment portfolio, or the wife by my side. But I had my health, my quiet, cherished routines, a newfound appreciation for the simple, everyday things, and an inner peace that transcended any external circumstance, any market fluctuation. The invisible scar remained, a part of my story, a silent testament to what I had endured and overcome. It was a reminder, not of what I had irrevocably lost, but of what I had profoundly gained. A deeper, more authentic understanding of myself, a profound gratitude for the everyday, unheralded moments, and a quiet, solitary contentment that felt more real, more enduring, more precious than any success I had ever chased, or any fortune I had ever amassed. This newfound peace, quiet and unpretentious, was a testament to survival, resilience, and the slow, often painful process of discovering true value in the simplest corners of a life rebuilt, brick by patient brick. If you've ever faced a moment where life threw an unexpected curveball that completely derailed your financial world, leaving you to rebuild from the ground up, I'd genuinely love to hear how you found your own path back to stability and inner peace. What was one small, unexpected joy that helped you through your toughest times, and what country are you watching this from today? Please share your stories and reflections in the comments below. Give this video a like if it resonated with your own journey, and consider subscribing to Credit and Coffee for more perspectives on life's most challenging financial journeys.